Julie, I'm wondering if that's everyone we were expecting, do you think?
Yeah, I think we could get started now, Kirsten.
Cool, excellent. Okay, well, welcome to all of you who've made the time to come to this webinar today. It's focused on CBM staff and partners who work on our community-based inclusive development programs. So my name is Kirsten Bate. I'm the program coordinator with the international programs team at CBM Australia. And we fund this project with the Australian government in Aceh, Indonesia. Now, we also have with us, you can see on the screen some lovely pictures. We have with us Asnawi, who'll say hello from Aceh.
Hi.
And Pak Iskandar, who is in Jakarta at the moment. You can say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iskandar. I'm the founder.
Hi, Iskandar.
I will.
Yes. So Asnawi is the coordinator of the program working in the local NGO FBA in Aceh. And Pak Iskandar, who just spoke now, is the lead. He was the lead evaluator for the evaluation in March 2020, just before the whole world got locked down. So we have a few audio issues with Pak Iskandar. So while he won't be able to do the presentation today, we're hoping that he can participate by hearing and reading some of your questions that you might have towards the end of the presentation. Now, we also have behind the scenes Julie from our quality team, and she's going to help us with all the technical issues. We hope there aren't too many, and we hope she'll help us. Okay, so we felt from the evaluation that we did of the Aceh project that there were some really good learnings that may reinforce some things that you already know are good practice in CBID, or that could bring some new insights. It will hopefully give you some ideas to ponder as you're involved in CBID programs in your own location. Obviously, it's always hard to know what is useful learning in a CBID project, and the context is so different that we're working with around the world. Hopefully, we can lift this presentation beyond just describing what the project did, which is wonderful work, but to talk more about what is useful learning from the project for other program implementers. So we're going to run through some slides. It's going to take about 40 minutes. If I can ask everyone to mute your microphones. And if you have some questions, you can pop them in the chat box to the side, and we will try and address those at the end of the presentation. I'm going to hand to Asnawi for the next slide.
So let's start by describing the project. I'm Asnawi, the program coordinator. So I will describe the project now. You will all know Aceh, the province in northern Indonesia that was worst hit by the tsunami of 2004. This program ran for 3 years, from 2017 throughout 2019. It was implemented by 2 NGOs working in 2 different districts. It employed 12 sub-district coordinators and 2 other program management staff. This was the first time that the 2 organizations had worked on disability project, and also the first time for this organization worked together. Working on the consortium had its own challenges, but it also created good learning. One learning here was that it created a spirit of healthy competition. The project was fairly typical of CBID project approach, like raising awareness, getting people with disability mobilized, developing self-help groups, supporting people to improve access to income through livelihood training, changing local government policies. The project supported the establishment of a DPO, but that wasn't our plan. I'll explain about that more later. So with the evaluation just completed, we thought it would be useful to showcase some of the learnings from this project. So before we talk about learnings, we first need to explain what the evaluation found were some of the achievements of the project. Firstly, the project was successful in getting district level commitments for funding disability at the village level. The project also set up 48 Selfhelp groups involving 900 people. Village funds were being allocated to support people's costs in getting training courses, both for people with and without disability. Around 270 people got some support to either improve existing businesses through some financial incentives. 150 people got some sort of vocational training, and we also supported a DPO to get going. So here's a diagram of what the project was trying to do.
Okay, so Pak Iskandar, as we mentioned before, led the evaluation in March, right before the nationwide lockdown. So it was probably the last field evaluation, certainly for us, that we completed before, that we completed with face-to-face interaction. There was a really good midterm review report of this project, and there was also a lot of really good data. The evaluation team was just two people, Pak Iskandar and Ibu Erlin, who was a local member of a DPO. And they worked quite well together as a team. The project team had many successes. For example, there's now 270 people earning, people with disability earning income, and 300 people with disability and their carers in self-help groups.
The project team, did a lot of work in raising awareness on disability rights. It is a fundamental first step in any CBID project. The evaluation found that it worked like magic. People talk about how their attitude has changed. The awareness raising was done by some of the existing DPOs, done also by people with disability themselves. The approach that they took here were training session with government staff, village leaders, media campaigns, joint event, group meeting, and personal approach. The project has a quite large focus on vocational training. It was not really big in number of people involved in this. Only 285 people, and 70 of these were carers. Of this number, only 184 got training, and the other 100 just got support to either kickstart or improve the business. So in terms of numbers, we had 12 coordinators, sub-district coordinators, so that it is about 15 people per coordinator or 5 person per year for training. People tell me that this is a much smaller number than any other CBID project in other countries. But we felt that we were able to have quality support in having a smaller number. The project team made a serious assessment of what the people needed. Sometimes people only needed an upgrade materials. For example, some extra tools, new oven, some additional baking equipment. Our team called this a start-up kit, but it wasn't tailored. But it was tailored to the person individual need. About 100 people were supported like this.
So important learning here was don't work with too many people. We have seen some CBID projects try to train 300 people a year, but we think it's better to be realistic about how much time and support people as individuals need. So the next way of working was linking people to training or internship. Sometimes they also got startup kits as well. The project team gave careful, meticulous attention to this, They had meetings attended by all project staff at each district where they discussed at length why a certain beneficiary should be granted such and such training or an internship opportunity, and whether or not they would get a startup kit. FBA also do this with our other CBM funded project. They look at individual needs, so they're seeing the individual. This was definitely a best practice that should be maintained. So in summary, we put a lot of emphasis on helping people think through the options and the opportunities. The important thing here was to have a comprehensive approach. So it was not just about training people, it was also about seeing them getting into ongoing employment. That was important, and again, not something that all CBID projects do. The project obviously asked people what they wanted to be trained in, but it was important to realise that people sometimes had trouble conceiving what they wanted to be trained in and considering what the choices and the options were. They hadn't had that choice or that conversation before. These people with disability often had had little exposure to the job market, so some had no idea what was a good choice. It was really important to remember this. So it was important to help people think through what the options would be, not just about the training, but how this would translate to work in the long term. So where could they work? What were the transport options and what were the costs to get to the workplace? Was there a market for their skill, or could they create that market? The project team knew that it was really important to try and get this right. You were dealing with vulnerable people, and it was important not to shatter their confidence by messing this up. So they took their time. Coordinators reported that many times it had not been easy and in fact quite tricky to get persons with disability to join or take vocational training. There were last-minute cancellations or changes of mind. The learning here is don't expect that it will be easy, even though this is providing people with an opportunity. Sometimes we think that people just should take up opportunities, but the work had to be approached as an individual case management process, and you won't have 100% success.
The evaluation looked at whether there was more success when people train along with other people with disability. And what was the outcome when the training was in a mainstream institution? There was two sorts of training over it. Exclusive training, especially arranged for people with disability, or supporting them to attend an outside class. Both had benefits. Interestingly, we found that the monitoring found that there was more success in exclusive training. People who attended an exclusive training tended to do better and were more likely to be earning an income as a result of the training. In addition to sending people off on courses, the project did a lot of work in getting local employers to provide training on the job. This is where the work of the CBID coordinators was really important. The target was to get 70 employers involved, but actually there were 111 employers involved. They did an amazing job at this point. This component of the project really builds people's confidence. The project did a lot of direct work in persuading employers before they had candidates in mind. One person in the project team was responsible for ensuring people with disability placed were tracking okay. There was an important role here in coordination, like getting things sorted out and dealing with logistics and challenges as they arose. This was one of the unique features of this project and one of the real successes. As well as providing training and building confidence, it's also important in changing community attitudes.
So the question is, how many people got employment as a result of this project? The expectation and the indicator of success in the project log frame had been that people would get jobs with employers. The reality is that this did not happen as much as we had expected. So did the project fail? Did the approach fail? No, we just had to adjust our expectations in the project. So what was achieved was that more people had skills and were doing some work, whether self-employment or odd jobs, than before. So what was learned? Many people will opt for self-employment. So the learning is plan for this. 66% set up their own enterprise, especially women. Men were more successful in getting employment, whereas women tended to set up a business. It is important to tailor expectations from the start to this reality. The learning is, and we have seen this in other programs too, that people with disability tend to choose to run a small business rather than working for a business and having to battle job applications, interviews, workplace discrimination, accessibility and transport, the challenges they often face. The evaluation found that training followed by an internship with an employer led to the best results. It was also important to ensure that people had startup equipment because, as I said, most people with disability after an internship were setting up their own businesses. So having the right equipment to get going was really important. Now, about these so-called starter kits. They were really, really important. The team tracked the success of people who received them and compared to those that did not. Those who got them did better. It was a project budget cost that was definitely worth it. Next, the project team supported people with help marketing products that people produced. So given that people were opting to run their own business, the project helped here, for example, improving the packaging or the branding of products, or, for example, getting micro-enterprise product licenses from the district authority. So they worked with individuals to help them on a one-on-one basis. This was a really important process to help ensure, for example, that the biscuits that a woman with disability was baking in her home could be trusted by buyers as quality and hygienic. The certificate number would be exposed on the label to build the buyer's confidence. This was an all-important part of the project. It all took time, so don't underestimate that. The other thing to note, not everyone is going to be a success. Family attitudes, we found, can often hold people back. There were examples where people were trained and then did not do anything with the training. For young women with disability, there were some examples of families not giving the needed support. So the learning here was work with the whole family and not just with the individual. That's really important. About 10% of people did nothing after the training. That's not too bad. More men did nothing than women, interestingly. Also, people with disabilities' own attitudes can hold them back. So some people said, I have a disability, I deserve charity. So that was an attitude that the team heard. There were other organisations in the area that were working and providing charitable assistance, so free things. So that contributed to that thinking. This affected persons with disabilities' commitment and enthusiasm in their livelihood struggle. The idea of strengthening the independence of people with a disability is still a new idea in ARCHE, and the project team recognised it would take time to change people's attitudes about themselves and their families' attitudes, as well as government's mindsets, attitudes and behaviours. So remembering that not all people with disability will be wanting to actively change their situation is really important. The project did work training caregivers. So 70 caregivers got some training, nearly all of them women. The project expected that the outcome for these caregivers would be better than the people with disability, but that actually wasn't the case. I suppose because of the competing pressures of being a caregiver, it's hard to set up a business too. So it's really important to be realistic about that and the role of women as caregivers. Thinking about what could have been done differently, one thing that the project team agreed that they should have done more of from the start was to get interest from local governments in supporting the vocational training and employment creation aspect of the work through funding the training and encouraging businesses to take on workers. So, for example, the project team could have asked local government to pay for some training or help them link with local employment association and promote opportunities. They are actually doing that now, but they should have done that more from the start of the project. Village funds are now paying for some of the training. The learning here is that local government should have been more involved from the beginning so that no livelihood program beneficiaries would be designated until an agreement is reached with the village administration. So that's the end of the section on vocational training. Asnawi will talk about advocacy.
The government aimed to change the project aimed to change local government and village level policies regarding disability, which is typical in any CBID project. The team started by targeting some more easy policy changes. This is a good strategy. Once those are in place, it sets up a precedent for more complex or harder to get policy changes. The project team strategized. It made clever choices of the people and the regulation to target. Personal relationships were important, getting to know local officials, meeting with them socially and engaging them. We always plan for longer-term policy change. What we achieved was at a village level, there were changes in the wording about the benefited, who benefited from social service support because of the project. Because of the project, it now included wording about people with disability. Once the village has made certain annual commitments to disability, then this is more likely to be renewed the following year. So the learning is start at a low level and build on that. This sets a precedent. The evaluation found that the project team could have done more systematically to record the commitments made by the government. This shows the long-term impact and also holds government accountable. Tracking successes also create peer pressure between villages. The project team set up Selfhelp groups. These were village-based. In this way, they could access money from the village fund. And because they were village-based, they had to include most people with and without disability. Just helping people with disability both would not have enough people in place at village level. So overall, there were 48 Selfhelp groups set up. In total, 900 members, about 50% people with disability, and also 50% carers. The project team visited and followed up people with disability and carers. Often they were hesitant to join Selfhelp group. They weren't sure if they could keep up with the financial contributions on the same terms as the others. The project team did a good job in encouraging and supporting these people. The evaluation found that there was very little discrimination in Selfhelp groups and a high level of acceptance. High level of acceptance of people with disability. Selfhelp group were also very attractive to younger people because it was a place where they could learn organizational skills. The main benefits of this Selfhelp group was economic improvement, revolving loans, and it helped to mitigate against loan shark. People had to pay in order to join this group, and then could loan from the group after 6 months. There were about 5 loans circulating at a time, and they had to repay within 6 months. Most loans borrowed for business. The group created the need peer pressure for saving. They needed peer pressure for saving. Now that the Selfhelp group are not meeting during the COVID crisis, people say that they don't have the same emotional impetus to save. The project has an indicator of success as being that Selfhelp group would get loans from banks, but none of this SSG did. This was unrealistic. So now Kristen will take over.
Sure. I just lost everyone, but I'm back now. So people in self-help groups were supported with training, but they didn't get starter kits and they didn't get help with marketing like some of the others. The project team deliberately decided to provide no startup or financial incentives to people in self-help groups. The evaluation team felt that this had mixed results. The evaluation really recommended that the project further assess whether it should take advantage of the dynamics and the strength of the self-help groups to link them in certain ways with all the elements of the livelihood component of the project to better ensure the latter's success. In the current approach, the two components were quite separate. So the other learning was that there is a decline in interest and attendance in self-help groups after 2 years. Many of you have probably seen this in your own programs. As enthusiasm for self-help groups dropped off, attendance drops off and people get less interested. So the learning here is that teams need to plan for this, to expect it. Don't let it be a surprise. You know, make sure that that's included in your design. It was important to provide ideas about how to keep self-help groups invigorated. For example, to give training and ideas for sharing for coordinators, invite people to come and speak to the group, get local leaders and community people involved, do some training in advocacy, things like that also keep the attention and engagement. The evaluation wondered, was the self-help group worth the effort? These are the interesting questions that we're going to have to spend a bit of time thinking about. Given that the project invested a lot of time with the self-help group, that it involved a lot of people without disability, remember only 15% of people in these groups had a disability, it is worth considering whether it would have been better to use time to focus on investing in livelihood support directly rather than setting up for self-help groups. So this is really one of the things we're going to have to think about before we go into the next phase of this project.
So a new DPO was formed as a result of the project. This was not in our plan. It resulted from people with disability coming together and seeing the need for a cross-disability DPO. As the project phase finished, the evaluation found that a DPO needs a lot of love. It is useful for advocacy and channeling individual people with disability to be active in the DPO. But they need organizational strengthening and support. The project teams should not underestimate the time it takes. And you can't leave them floating. The project team needs to think about how to link them with district and provincial TPOs, and how would they fit within a network in a long term.
So one last thing we wanted to talk about was data, and one thing that the project has always done really well is collect data. So right at the beginning of the project, a baseline was done, and this was very, very useful when we came to do the evaluation at the end. From this, the evaluation team could make some clear comparisons about changes that the project had caused. For example, we could show changes in the levels of dependency between 2017 and 2019. On the slide, you'll see an example. And what we see there is there has been a reduction in people with disability who are highly dependent on their families from 49% to 25%. So this is great to see quantitative data that can show that change. The project also tracked things like attitude change amongst the government. They also tracked increases in employment and the degree to which people with disability were socialising. However, the evaluation team, when trying to interpret the data, found that some data got a bit muddled and then wasn't quite as useful as we'd hoped. The learning here is about thinking about what is going to go into a database, what it will tell us at the start of the project when the database is being set up. For example, tracking whether people had got a job after training. It wasn't that useful just to have a yes/no option in the database. Some people were only doing very small jobs after the training. So was this a yes or a no? Some people thought it was a yes, others thought it was a no. So clarity was needed amongst the whole project team about how to track things and how to answer things in a consistent manner. So most projects don't have the luxury of a monitoring person who is doing that job specifically. So teams need to be clever about what data they collect, input and analyse. So the learning is don't overdo it. Sit down at the start of the project and think through some areas of change that you want to measure and do these well. rather than measuring too many things and then not being able to manage the data and then feeling like it's out of control and the donor's going to be mad at you. This is a challenge for many project teams. So another learning is don't just collect data, look at it. What is it telling you? A lot of data in this project was collected annually that showed annual achievements, but the evaluation team said that there was not enough comparison of results from one year to the next. So using the data to ask, what's happening over time? What is it telling us? What changes should we be making? So the learning is, don't leave it to an evaluation to analyse the data. Often there isn't even time in the evaluation to do this. This is the role of the team, the project team. An evaluator's role is to verify, to look deeper. So monitoring and evaluation go hand in hand. So in conclusion, the project will now be supported into a next phase. So that's what we're planning at the moment. They will need to work out where the focus will be. Will it be vocational training and creating employment, supporting the new DPO, working in new districts? The evaluation has been useful in highlighting the successes, showing how a CBID project has approached change and highlighting some areas to improve on next time round. Involving local government more from the start, building on the successes of the vocational training, thinking about how to keep self-help groups active and whether to focus on these, and better ways to manage data and demonstrate change. So overall, there was a lot of positive results from this project and a lot of good learning. And so we're really enthusiastic about what the project has achieved and what it can go on to achieve in a follow-up phase. So thank you all very much for your patience in listening to us today. Is there anyone that would like to ask any questions?
Okay, it's Julie here, and Petra has written a question in the chat box. She says it's very interesting learning. Thanks for sharing. This is a question too, as Nawi. How did you assess dependency rates? So you notice that slide about people were highly dependent at the start was 49%, and then it dropped to 25%. How did you assess that, as Nawi?
I think this question should be first come to Pak Iskandar, because I think that resulted from the evaluation, because that is a learning from us. We didn't really measure dependency. That's one is a good point from Pak Iskandar to us.
Yeah, but Navi, what was the question? It wasn't very clear to me. I got the problem like the other day. Is the what you call the voice that is not very good.
Okay, so maybe
what was the question? Can you repeat it?
Julie, would you please?
Asnawi, can you say the question in Bahasa? How did you measure the change in dependency rates?
Pak Iskandar, mohon maaf ya, saya pakai bahasa Indonesia. Ada yang tanya nih, itu ada pertanyaan samping.
Silakan bahasa Indonesia.
Bagaimana Bapak mengukur tingkat ketergantungan, Pak?
Ketergantungan yang mana? Dependency.
Ya, Pak. Dalam bahasa Inggris saja, Pak. Dalam bahasa Inggris saja, Pak.
This is actually something that they need some criticism. I'm sorry. Yeah. Because it's the project needs to develop a monitoring system, like what to monitor to identify the level of dependency, because at the baseline data, something left what you call about dependency, but the level of dependency. However, there is just the data was missing on the database, so the level of dependency was fine, decided by the project, by the tech team. So I believe there was 3 levels of dependency, like the highly dependency or moderate and to call it only slightly dependent. So the other thing that was justified by the project for the evaluation. Yeah, so it was justified by the for evaluation. It was not. I didn't do the I didn't find the dependency because it's impossible for me. Yeah, so the team did, and we did with the level of dependency in the baseline data. Yeah, this is what is important, because the monitoring system
are some of the challenges of the
should be defined as such. Will all answer always so match the blind data. That's what I can say.
Great, thank you, Pakistander. I think it's probably a more complex question than we can explain on a webinar. Lewis from Cameroon asks, this again is a question to Asnawi. How did you succeed in getting in convincing businesses to take on people? Was that just luck, or were there strategies in place to engage the community to have people training in their businesses?
So thank you, Julie.
Is that for me or what? I can't get that.
No, the question is for Asnawi.
Okay.
In the livelihood components at individual level for person with disability or carers, we have to approach 2 strategies. First, through employment, paid employment, and the second is business. This is somewhat different in nature. For vocational training, we assess at individual level, and we ask them what they need, and also whether or not we can bring them out of their village to training places, or we try to find specific places for them to be trained. For example, a neighborhood in their village, because it's convenient for the family to take to and fro from house, so to take and to pick up from house. So, and at the end, usually the owners of the training attempt to employ or to give some trust for people with disability to work or to have a try at their work from this vocational training. Once they do good things.
So the question is, was it really hard to convince them to do that? And what strategies did you use?
No, the point is we have to give them a go. So we have to convince the owner of the training or job givers or potential employers to have a go, to have a try, and we have to monitor very closely during the first 1 or 2 weeks to ensure that first the communication, and also the adjustment, and also salary and everything else. And after that, the people with disability feel comfortable, and also the owners, including the trainers, they trust us and they trust people with disability to go on, to get payments and so on. But in some ways, for formal employments, like formal sector, it is difficult because the majority of our beneficiaries with disability are actually have a low education level, So that's beyond their reach. Beyond their reach. Moreover, in our area, there are no over limited number of formal sector. So there are no limited hotels, there are limited factories, limited offices. So we target small businesses and using personal approach. So that way easier than that we target if we target large or formal sector. I think Kristen have highlighted well in the slides.
Thank you. There's another question here from Herc in the Philippines and from Larju in Australia about the DPO. Can you just, it seems surprising that you didn't plan to set up a DPO, but that's what happens. Can you just tell us a bit more, Asnawi, about the story of that and what's your plan for supporting them into the future?
So this is a PD district. We have 2 districts here. One district is close to this capital city, so they have more DPOs. The other district is PD, only 2 DPOs existing DPO. So in the middle of the project, we only have they only have 2 specific DPOs. So there were no any cross disability DPOs. So then from the conversation, because we engaging with them very often, so then the ideas merge among people with disability to form a new DPO. So to make 3 DPOs, 2 specific and 1 cross disability.
So
but
when
this
you say
DPO,
when you say specific, you mean like a DPO for people who with visual impairment or something like that? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And also another one is people with hearing impairments.
Okay.
So cross disability, and they basically the project beneficiaries, but they are smart. They are active. So and the project thought that the project team thought this is an opportunity because apart from the specific needs, we have to think about the general needs where a lot of people with different type of impairment can gather and have common goals. And then our partner in PD called PASCA, this organization, DPO attached to the organization. So we give space, we give resources, we facilitate meetings, and we link them with the government. So to improve their confidence and also about law, what we call the papers, the requirements to be a formal organization. So we help them with that. And fortunately, this DPO worked faster than we expected, than we anticipated, because they are very energized. So sometimes without the project companionship, and they come alone, they go along to the government and advocate their needs. And it's good learning for us as organizations, and also good learning for them as a DPO, as new DPO.
Great, thank you. All right, so here's a question from Stephanie. She's asking Iskander, Pak Iskander, what do you think was the most important achievement of the project? What was the most important achievement of the project in your mind?
What was the important of the project?
The biggest achievement from in your point of view, what was the biggest achievement?
Important achievement.
Yeah.
What was the important achievement?
The most
I
one,
think,
the biggest. Yeah.
I think I put it in the. Yeah. The most important achievement is the awareness that was created among the general population and also among the people with disabilities themselves. I mean, because that can be a very good start because the what you call the, like what was said about village administration, contribute to training, for example, or contribute to things for disability is because of they had become aware of the rights, especially the rights of the people with disability, also that people with disability able to do something, to do as much as what other people without disabilities can do. Like for example, people without disability can be trained in mechanics, automotive mechanics, for example, and people with disabilities, train on. For women, mostly they were trained in being the police, things like that. And it's something that have created the dynamic within the community itself.
Okay, thank you. So it was really about attitude,
So
attitude change
what
across
was
the board.
It's like magic. It's just like because people just become aware that that's something that we have done and we should now do it.
Great. So it sounds like
I think that's the most important one.
As Nawi and team, it sounds like that you were magicians. Okay, another question. Thank you, Pakistanda. So Marie Madeline asks,
yes.
Marie Madeline is asking Asnawi, can you tell me, did the self-help groups do much work in trying to change government policies? Just tell us a bit more about who are the main drivers of trying to convince government to change policies at local level.
So this project has three main components, and one of them is policy change, including also disability inclusion and social inclusion. Yeah, and this SSG drive the economic change and also social inclusion. Economic change for the members because they access money, and also for social inclusion. Social inclusion here, after we train them, all the component for economic, like administration, finance, and everything. And then the next step is to educate or to share with them and how they can be more active in the community. So their function is not at the government, district and sub-district level, but more at the village level, because they are village-based and they are a group of people. They are also function to campaign, like how the model of social inclusion as a group, like where they gather people with and without disability with the same goals. And as a group, they advocate the village to get to have access to participation in village meeting and also planning, and also in training, in all the village implementation in development. So, and also we found that in almost all village where SSG is established, the village is more functioning in terms of disability inclusion. It works, so it kind of candidate of inclusive village. If I'm not too confident to say inclusive village, it is a candidate. There are many candidates because they already improve accessibility, improve better budgeting, better involvement, and also decision making. I think Pak Iskandar found a lot about that as a showcase when Pak Iskandar conducted the evaluation. So the function of SSG more at village level, while the cross-sectorial actors and we and DPO play at the sub-district and village and sub-district and sub-district and district level. I think that is my answer.
Great, thank you. So working at all levels, different people working at different levels. Okay, we might make this the last question, which I'm going to choose from the range of questions, which is from Shanawaz in Bangladesh. So he says, thanks for the great presentation. so this is a question to both. Let's ask Iskander first, but then also as Nawi. He says one of the major challenges with income generation activities is the continuity and profitability in the long run. Can you share any perspectives on that, Iskander? Did you think that people were going to be able to continue to generate income in the long run?
What was it? The one that is about income generation, right?
Yeah, income generation.
The question is what question?
Asnawi, maybe you can translate. Maybe you can start to answer or translate into Bahasa.
What is the question? I just couldn't catch the words.
What do you think that people will continue to generate income in the long run from the training that they have developed, or is it just going to be a short-term success? Did you have any perspective on that?
What would people sorry that.
What about Asnawi? What about you? Did you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, can you have?
Okay, I try to answer. My perspective on the livelihood in the long term for people with disability is it depends on the nature the nature of the skills and also the training and also the support that we give at the beginning. If we start a very new business, very new work, very new skills, then there is a risk in there that they may jump to new skill later, because there are a lot of other actors in place which also training like us, and they also offer startup kits. But what we do is we try to assess the existing skills, the existing interests of the people with disability. So I think this also the point addressed in the midterm review, that why we try to help people that already earn income. But this is what we consider as our job, and they're not sure what they're doing. And our job is to make them confident with what they're doing and try to upgrade the skills, and then give a startup kit later. And we provided this training since 2017, and most of them still exist up to today because of this strategy. But some people, we also have some learning that people we try to put out of their existing job. For example, there was a truck assistant. We see that we only see with our eyes. So when we come to assessment a couple of times, they have a voice that they want to do something better, like fixing motorcycles or fixing electronics. And we say this is good because they work under the shade, not working in the hard, in the dry and in the window trees. They work very hard. But at the end, when they realized that this type of work actually make them tight and make them closed down, locked down in a shade, and then they get out and go back to work in the truck. Because very often when we go making assessment, we use our observation and their aspiration and the family aspiration, and very often they just pop up to their mind whatever they come up and they say, I want this, even though we assess the need is not that. So it's the combination. It's a bit tricky how we jump into the existing work. We have to be very careful in that. Otherwise, we may ruin the existing job, and also they may be jobless again because we change the interest and we try to change their skill too. So to us, actually, as long as they still have a job, even though at the end they shifted from the job that we train to other job, similar job or different job, that's okay. What we try to do in that way is to give them motivation to keep going with their livelihood earnings, so not depending on the family no more. So
Great.
because we cannot stop them from moving, but as long as they still have an income to earn, that's
Great,
all.
thank you. And I think what you see here is that emphasizes that you are only working with a small amount of people, not thousands and thousands. And so you're able to support people individually to make sure that they're not only the training is appropriate, but then their employment pathway is also appropriate. So
Correct.
I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much to Pak Iskander for the evaluation and your insightful learnings. Thank you to Asnawi and the team for your presentation and your great work, and for Kirsten and Asnawi for presenting tonight. If you've got any other questions about the project or would like to read the full evaluation report, please get in touch with us at CBM Australia on the email there, which is programs@cbm.org.au, and we'd be happy to follow up with you. So thank you. Thank you from me, Julie Smith in Australia, and Kirsten in Australia, and the team in Indonesia, Ahmed Jaka in the Indonesian country office.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.